Welcome to Roklin's webinar. This morning we will be doing a presentation on pavement safety, OSHA, and ADA requirements. Our presenters will be Joe Cushman, Robert Montgomery, and Tamar. That's me. To begin with, I introduced Joe Cushman talking about pavement safety, and he should be on right about now. Are you there, Joe?
Yes, I'm here.
Go right ahead and take over.
Okay, thanks. I'm Joe Cushman, the upstate New York distributor for Roklin System Products, and I've been involved with this since 2011 in spring. What I want to talk about today is pavement safety and how that can be improved through using the Roklin System products. And, I'm going to click ahead here and bring up the first slide. Personal safety, that usually comes up a lot more often than maybe like on the highway up in upstate New York here, due to sidewalks that have typical problems due to age, spalling, potholes, uneven flags due to shifting with the freeze thaw that we have here. And one of the solutions that seems to work real well is when the property owner decides to either replace everything, which is very costly, or come up with an interim fix that will defer that high replacement cost. And there's a need to do that because of the liability. And if an insurance holder sees unsafe conditions on someone's property, like an entrance to a public building, a school, a hospital, any kind of other public place where there's pedestrian traffic at a business, privately or publicly owned, they can definitely make improvements to the safety and reduce liability by taking some action. In the next slide, here's a photo of, this is at a mall in Syracuse, New York, Destiny USA, which is one of the biggest malls in the country. And they've got a lot of money, but they seem to spend it on things that are higher priority than getting the sidewalks really up to speed where there is a subtle tripping hazard that does exist. Whether in this case here, if you look at this photo, this is a transition from uneven flags in the sidewalk, and this is right at their main entrance to the mall. There's several entrances, but this is one of the most popular, heavily used entrances. And I took this picture just last week when I was down there walking through and looking for some. They bought the product in the past, and just see how their crews and their maintenance people are installing it. And this Roklin Flex set that was used here, probably less than one kit, made a smooth apron transition from one elevation of a flag to the next and reduced probably a 2-inch tripping hazard that is right there waiting for somebody to fall. And sidewalks aren't supposed to be uneven or have holes in them or badly spalled where somebody could twist an ankle or, worse yet, trip and fall. And with the public going in and out, people are looking for ways to get a claim. So this is a real quick, cheap, inexpensive way to reduce that problem that doesn't look like it's too bad of a problem unless somebody looks at it a little closer. And the owner's liability is it's his property, and it's open to the public. And his insurer, is trying to do the best he can to encourage the owner to make it as safe as possible, because you don't want to have a claim, and that's what we're really talking about here. But the owners I've dealt with in upstate New York, if they have the money, it's a nice thing to do. That's some of the attitude towards it. But in reality, it's really a necessary thing, either to do some interim fixes like this, or you hire a contractor and spend a lot of money and replace all of a long section that's got some problems similar to this. And unfortunately, if there's a claim, then they're spending money to settle that claim, where that money maybe was intended to do something higher priority that they weren't aware this was going to even come up. So it is a cost-effective solution, as the next slide indicates. Most of these fixes at a sidewalk were usually, I've seen a lot of degradation where between two flags where they meet, there's like a crevice. It's like a V-type notch where each one's eroded at an angle, and it leaves a gap, and it's like a it's not real deep, but it's deep enough to cause a tripping hazard. And that's for typically less than a bucket of flex set, or the Polyflex DS Gray, or the concrete welder mixed with its your own aggregate. That kind of thing can be resolved pretty quickly, and it's going to last on a pedestrian surface because the product and materials are designed for highway traffic. So they hold up well under highway traffic. They definitely are going to hold up well under foot traffic because the load isn't anywhere near as much, even though the usage may be high. It's a real good solution, and it seems to be pretty effective up in upstate New York. I've got a lot of customers that are taking advantage of this kind of fix on sidewalk areas and the like. So I've also had people that have buildings with floors that are where there's some unevenness, or they've got a real bad spall area where they have to drive equipment across with like a forklift, and to have the bumpiness. There's actually 2 apple orchards in upstate New York that they carry crates of apples across their building with a forklift. And if the forklift's bouncing around on a bad floor, it damages the apples, and it costs them money. So it's not so much a safety as it is it's just not effective for them. So they like to the simplest fix is to recoat the floor and even it out with the Flex Set product. The next slide is another picture. This is out on a highway, and even on highways, this is a state-owned highway in upstate New York where you can see the patches that were done. One was saw cut. The rectangular one was saw cut out and down to rebar, and that was filled in with the concrete welder gray with a 3/8 pea stone aggregate, and that was a major repair. There was a bad spalled section there, and it was a pothole. The other 2 to the left were just smaller potholes that they wanted to take care of while they were still there, out there. And this is a concrete bridge deck, and it is a traffic hazard, especially for motorcycles. I'm not sure so much for big trucks going over it. They're probably not going to lose stability or go off the road because they hit something like this, but a motorcycle, and if you didn't see it, it could really be a problem. And because some of these were deep, they're in the road, they're 2, 3, 4 inches deep, and they're irregular and random. And the alternative to this is live with the problem and take your chances that nobody's going to come and have get injured or have a claim, or they wait till it's bad enough, and then they shut the lane down, and 1 lane at a time they redeck or replace the whole bridge. Usually a redecking job, which is probably hundreds of times the cost of doing this. 2 hours. It took about from the time they set up the cones to the time I took them down. That morning I was there doing this repair. There's probably 2 hours passed with a 4-man crew. So they're not looking at a lot of cost to do a repair that's going to last for years. When the deck gets worse over time and there's more of these, they end up spending the money. They plan on replacement down the road, but that's several years usually. And these are the kind of ones where they're in that gray area, what I'm talking about, between the ones that are definitely need replacement and the ones that are in good shape. And there's definitely a gray area there. So what this does is there's subtle problems in the pavement surfaces that present a high risk for injury or claim. And with a high quantity of small damage presents the greatest probability of pedestrian trips. If you've got a lot of these, the percentages go way up that somebody's going to have a problem sooner or later. And most of them don't do too much till it's too late. So my job is to go in and talk to some people, show them where we can use this product, and I'll do a demo and I'll put it in. And I'll say, you don't have to weigh the cost-benefit here, but if you look at the liability that exists before you do it, it's probably well worth the money to go ahead and make these fixes. And instead of waiting till it's so bad that they have to replace it. And also, this preventive maintenance, which is literally what this is, and preventative damage, it's also asset preservation. Because when this is repaired, the property, the owners, his assets are in better shape than they were before, and he can plan to do larger scale replacements in the future. But in the meantime, he's got a safe, better looking surface for his customers and the public. And the same. I'll close with this. The same thing applies to to asphalt surfaces, especially in drives and parking lots. Now, out on the highway, they tend to have the highway departments tend to they'll resurface a highway entirely or do a large overlay, or worst case, if they can't do that, they'll do a big large cutout, saw cut, and they'll repave a rectangular section in the middle of a road or several hundreds of square feet. But where they have potholes in areas that are maybe off the main roads, but they're on still streets and in some drives, entrances to public places and parking lots, it's a lot more cost effective to do these small repairs with the flow table than it is to go and have a major contractor come in and do bigger fixes. And so that's pretty much what I've got. There's a little information here on, this was free advice I found on, like a city, for instance, with there's three scenarios for a city liability. I've worked with cities that have they maintain their own sidewalks. Some they ask the property owner to maintain them, and there's other cities that have immunity from any type of problem. So there can be a lawsuit filed against the city in the first two cases where they own it and they're responsible for maintaining it. And if somebody was to fall on a sidewalk that was in poor shape that was owned by the property owner, the individual, they could sue them. In the third case, which I haven't seen too many of, that is this immunity from government immunity is case C of this information that was provided here. You can see case B and then case A. And that's pretty much all I have, and I'm open to try and answer some questions at this time.
Actually, Joe, we're going to do the questions at the end of the presentation.
Okay, very good. Yeah.
Right now we're going to do the first prize drawing. And this one is for a first aid kit. And we randomly chose these. It goes to Frank Bardazol. We will be sending that out in the mail, so you know. And next we have Robert Montgomery coming up. Robert?
I'm on. I'm just trying to get set up here. It just reloaded me. I guess I can control this?
Yes, you can. You should be on your Cal OSHA Overview slide.
Does everybody have the same one?
Yep.
Okay. You guys aren't seeing any of this other. This is the first time for me with this ReadyTalk system. I've used other ones, but you're not seeing the tabletop that I'm seeing, are you?
Yes, we are. We're seeing the Cal OSHA Overview slide right now.
The full slide, not all the stuff below it?
Right. Well, no.
Okay, good.
Go right ahead.
Okay. Well, greetings all. My name is Robert Montgomery. I'm the Chief Investigator and Trainer for Montgomery Investigations. We're a private investigation and health and safety training company. And so we'll just jump into this. For those, if there's anybody from out of state, I apologize. This is only for Cal OSHA regs. The federal regulations or the state that you're in, if they're an approved state, will have their own. They're fairly similar, but we're looking at, since we're based here in California, at Cal OSHA's look. As with federal OSHA, Cal OSHA's purpose is to ensure the workers have a safe and healthful work environment. The onus is on the employers. Cal OSHA's regulations are all found in Title 8 of the California Code of Regulations, whereas the federal regs are in 29 CFR. They're broken up in two areas of what they're concerned with. One is safety, and the other one is industrial hygiene. Safety elements, falls, trips, slips, those type of things. Industrial hygiene, chemical exposures. Our employees being exposed at levels above that are unhealthful. Within Cal OSHA, they have two branches, their enforcement group and their consultation group. And both have safety engineers and industrial hygienists, but their purposes are different. And pretty much by the tone, you can see that enforcement, that's what they're designed to do, is make sure that companies are in compliance, that they're protecting their workers. And we're going to look quickly, or we're going to look next at we'll look a little more in depth in terms of the consultative branch a little bit later. The OSHA regulations are not all inclusive. They have different sections. They have the general industry, they have construction, and construction regulations can fall into general industry depending on what's happening in a company. If they're doing repairs on their facilities, if they're doing work, they fall under both not only general industry but construction-based. At the federal level, they have what's called a general duty clause. It's a catch-all. Because the standards are not all-inclusive, if they don't have a specific standard, they'll fall under the general duty clause and say, well, you should have known that was a hazard, should have taken steps to mitigate it, and they'll cite you under that. California originally didn't have a general duty clause, but what they've come up with is the IIPP program, the Illness and Injury Prevention Plan. And in there, that has become California's general duty clause. The key to it with the OSHA regulations is that they're just a minimum standard. There's nothing in there that says a company can't go up and beyond them, but what it's saying is you can't go below them. However, if you do go up above them and say, for instance, you have to wear hard hats at all times, even though in some instances they're not required by the standards, they will cite based on your company's policies. So if you have in your IIPP that you're going to hold safety meetings every month and you don't have documentation showing that you are holding safety meetings every month, they can cite the employer for that. So it's something to keep under that, again, the OSHA regulations are just minimum standards, and anything up and above the company can do on their own. So what triggers an inspection? Well, there's basic areas. One, an employee complaint, an accident investigation. And under the OSHA regulations, there are specific standards that tell when you have to report an accident to OSHA. And many times, a 911 call will trigger a notification to OSHA, even if it's a minor, and they may or may not come out on it, but a 911 call is going to. The other aspect of their enforcement inspections are what are called program inspections. Those are areas that are either set by Cal OSHA or Fed OSHA has said these are areas that we want a little more emphasis placed on. And you can see the list there that they're looking at construction, agriculture. One of the areas the federal OSHA is pushing right now is what's called temporary help. Staffing companies. You get people in, they want to make sure that the temporary help. And then they have a list what's called the high hazard program. And you can download that list from Cal OSHA, and there's about 10 industry or industrial groups that are listed on there which are called high hazard, and those are part of their program inspections. They're going to look at companies in any one of those 10 industries. So if you get a citation, what can you look forward to? Well, they have different categories, and you can see the fines can be rather expensive, upwards to $7,000 for some of the lower end, or what are called regulatory or general, such as reporting violations, not having a written plan, not having implementation, not having documentation, up to $25,000 for what's called a serious violation. And then they have enhancements on that for repeat, failure to abate, and willful. Willful is one that they've come in before and cited on it and told you it was a serious one, and no steps have been taken to correct that. Now it becomes a willful, and you're looking at that where it's up to $70,000. Earlier I had said that that's on the enforcement side. There is a kinder, gentler Cal OSHA, and they're the Consultative Services. They will come into a facility. You must invite them. You have to call them up, ask them to come into your facility. They act as a consultant to assist the employer. They're not allowed to issue fines or penalties. There's no citations issued. It's a free service. Their information is not allowed or supposed to be shared with enforcement. So if they come into a facility and do a walkthrough, and I should emphasize that when they do a walkthrough, they are not OSHA proofing you. Many of their consultants and the people in their group have specific areas they look at. What they're trying to do is some of the obvious things or the areas that will look at the hot topic issues to protect the company. But they'll come in and walk through the facility. If they find violations or prospective violations, they will issue you a letter and say these things have to be addressed, and they'll give you timetables for them. The serious ones we'll see have to be addressed immediately, but they will, and then you have to, as a company, have to respond back to them and tell them what steps you have taken to address each of sort of the bullet items that they pointed out. They also develop publications which can be found online at Cal OSHA, and they will answer questions if you call them up by phone with regards to what's going on. Sounds all good and it is a great service. However, there is a catch. If serious or imminent danger violations are found, they have to be corrected. As you see, a serious one has to be corrected within 30 days. An imminent one has to be corrected immediately. They will, if those aren't taken care of, at that point they will refer it to enforcement. But they give you time to correct it. They're big on, when they're walkthroughs, that they want employee involvement of the company. And the employer has to post any identified serious violations so that the employees know that these have been identified, and then the company is going to take 30 days to get those addressed. OSHA does have what they call their hot topics right now. Confined spaces, their new globally harmonized system, which is part of the Hazard Communication Program. Earlier it said in terms of them looking at construction, they're looking at framers. They're really moving hard on temporary employees. These are employees that, as you see, they're called dual workplace employers. So it's a staffing company that's bringing employees into a company to work for them. There is liability from both what's called the host employer and the enabling employer from that standpoint. What I want to tie to these are what are called OSHA's most cited violations, and we'll look at those. And you'll see they'll kind of overlap, or they'll mirror what they're looking at in terms of their programmed enforcement or programmed inspections, as well as we'll see later on the hot topic ones that they're looking at right now. But this is the top 10. The ones that are highlighted in yellow has to do with electrical issues. But you can see that at the top of their list, it's been there for years upon years since it was first implemented, and it's one of their hot topic ones is the IIPP, the Injury and Illness Prevention Program. It's still the #1 cited violation for Cal OSHA, continues to be. Heat illness is a big one right now, particularly during the summers. It's one of their planned enforcement in terms of mostly from an agricultural standpoint. But as you look down the list, air compressors, portable fire extinguishers, these all mirror what their hot topics are right now. So we're going to look at some of those. The IIPP program has been in effect for a long time. However, it's still the most cited regulation on the books because it's taken on that catch-all. It's taken on that general duty clause. And each employer, as soon as you have one employee, you're required to have an IIPP. And it has to be written. Now, they do have requirements in there, or less stringent requirements for smaller businesses that have 1 to 10 to 50 employees, depending on the size. They do allow certain things, different requirements to be viewed, but everybody has to have an IIPP. If you have an employee, and I point that out from the standpoint that even if you're a single company and you're incorporated, you have employees because your president, vice president are considered employees of the corporation, and you have to have an IIPP. The next one they're looking at is the new GHS, a globally harmonized system that were the new changes in 2012 for the Hazard Communication Program, which is also known as the Worker Right to Know. Right now, it's a phased implementation. Training was required for employees to be done by December 1st of last year. The labeling and safety data sheets requirements for the producers and manufacturers of the chemicals are phased in over the next couple of years. One of the things they've changed is they've gone from MSDSs, or material safety data sheets, to SDSs. They've dropped the material. The labeling requirements have changed. They've added pictograms to them. The training requirements really haven't changed, and the written program has, and it's really down to the SDSs and the labeling on the chemicals that are coming in. They're trying to get a uniformed labeling system worldwide so that if a product comes in or shipped to another country, there's not different labeling requirements for that hazardous chemical. Another big area they're looking at are fire extinguishers. They're up on the list of the violations, mostly from the standpoint that they're not being visually inspected on a monthly basis. Most people think you have to inspect them once a year. That's annual recharge. There's that tag on, you look on the back, they're required to be visually inspected on a monthly basis. And the tag's back there to write down the date of that inspection and initial it, as well as they're required to be mounted, signed, their access to them can't be restricted, and then training requirements that are associated with it. The other big area they're looking at are what are called lockout and blockout requirements for the de-energization of equipment when it's undergoing repair, maintenance, and those type of things, as well as, and it doesn't just apply to electrical, it also applies to anything that has stored energy, hydraulic, gravity, those type of things. And along with this program, there's also a written requirements to the program. Respiratory protection, if you're required due to contaminants in the air to have it, they're looking at this program. Again, it's another written program that you have to have with each of the elements, starting from medical evaluation down to the storage and sanitation of those elements within the program. Earlier I talked about what would trigger an inspection. One of them has to do with injuries. And this is on Cal OSHA's list, so one of the top 10 is failure to report serious injuries to Cal OSHA within the required reporting period. And this is the list of those things that trigger a reporting requirement. Some of them are obvious, the fatalities. Hospitalization has to be more than 24 hours for a medical treatment other than observation. And then they have some other ones that are a little more nebulous in terms, catastrophes and significant media coverage. Those are a little more difficult to define. But the basic requirement is if you have an injury that falls into one of these categories, you have to call the local enforcement office within 8 hours. And their phones are answered 24/7. Compressors have crept up on the list. Many people don't realize that there are permit requirements for compressors depending on their size, as well as belt and pulley guarding that have always been under machine guarding, as well as signage for auto start systems. And each one of those areas are separate violations that OSHA looked at. The final area that's on their hot topic is electrical. This not only covers the lockout, tagout, or lockout, blockout aspects of it, but electrical in general. And what I've got on here is a few areas where OSHA looks and will cite on. The top picture shows the grounding plug that's been cut off. You've got a 3-prong cord, and you only have a 2-prong outlet to stick it in some of the older buildings, and people have taken them off or they've broken off. That's a violation. In the second picture is the use of extension cords as permanent wiring. They'll cite on it. And then the bottom picture shows an electrical panel block, and there are distance requirements, and you can't have anything blocking electrical panel. And this becomes prevalent in buildings and companies that use their electrical area or panels as a extra storage area. And OSHA likes to look in those hallways and behind doors to see just those type of things that are going on. Coming to the close of this, I put on the OSHA sites, not only Cal OSHA site, but also federal OSHA. And under Cal OSHA, there are publications. They have a full set of Title VIII regulations. They have policy and procedures. You can actually download their inspection manual for various areas to see what they're looking for and the procedures they go through. That's all public information. It kind of gives you the inside workings of OSHA. The one caveat to this is that I will say that Cal OSHA's website is not as good navigating it as is the federal OSHA site. And the federal OSHA site has far more educational materials, but they're at the federal level, but they are applicable in California. There's just some minor nuances between the two of them overall. In closing, this is a link to their consulting offices site that can show for the various area, as well as their 1-800 number. And with that, that's pretty much the end of my presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Robert.
You're welcome.
If there are any questions, we can tackle those at the end. I'm not sure who's on right now. But we have the next drawing, and that will be for the safety glasses, and that will be going to Cynthia Myers. So we'll move on right now. I will talk about ADA requirements. I'm sorry, can you guys hear that person speaking?
Yeah, see, somebody needs to mute their...
I'm afraid we have an international person who isn't muted. ADA requirements are something that have become a pretty hot topic. They've been around for quite a while, but because for some reason in 2010 it became something that the government decided to kind of focus on, and in 2012 they started enforcing the standards for program accessibility. They really focus a lot on people in wheelchairs, people walking with walkers. I broke my back some years ago and walked with a walker for a little while, so I became acutely aware of every crack and bump and gap in the pavement. It's something that needs to be addressed because you can be fined by the ADA. One of the reasons that they focus on this is because getting around is always difficult for disabled people. Tripping hazards are a serious issue for them, and the ADA has decided that, you know, it's something they really want people to tackle. Anything that's over 1/4 inch is defined as a tripping hazard. This applies to federal, state, county, municipal. Basically, as a rule of thumb, if you have people from the public or you have employees that are in your facility, you're liable. Tripping hazards have to be removed from any public or commercial sidewalk. Handrails have to be installed. This is to help people in wheelchairs, people using a ramp, or for assistance in walking. They also prefer that we use floor markings. If there is a tripping hazard that you can't tackle, I know you've probably seen black and yellow tape that warns people about a change in height or a surface texture. Mostly you need to know that if you have people in your building, there's a possibility that you need to be open to having people in a wheelchair or with a walker, on crutches. They need to be able to get in. Here's a list of all of the different entities that are covered by the ADA: inn, hotel, motel, restaurants, bars, movie theater, auditoriums, convention centers, grocery stores, clothing store, rental establishments, laundromats, dry cleaners, hospitals, schools, bus terminal, a train stop, museums, libraries, zoos, nursery schools, all schools, daycare centers, health spa, bowling alley. Pretty much anywhere where you're open to the public, you have to meet these requirements. This is just a little history. The ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, was enacted by the Congress in 1990. 2009 started to become a little bit more prominent, and in 2010 they updated the laws and began enforcing them. Best way for you as a property owner or business owner or manager is to keep your pavement clean and crack-free. That is the end of my ADA compliance. We have our third prize drawing, which is a vehicle safety kit, and that one is going to a Robert Robertson.
Yay.
So right now we will open this up to the question and answer period. We have Robert and Joe on if anyone has any questions, and of course I'm here. Feel free. Does anyone have any questions? Well, it looks like we don't have any questions.
When do I get my prize?
Well, Robert, I will pull up your information and contact you. That would be Robert Robertson, and we will send your prize out today. Also, for your next, if you're ordering with us online, you can enter safety during checkout, and that coupon code will give you 20% off your next order. This expires July 11th. So thank you very much for attending.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us.
And thank you to our speakers.
Thank you. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.